Welcome to me. Hi, this is Michael Savage. I'm going to be reading today from an unpublished novel, which I've done for you in the past. It's going to take me a second to set up. As you know, I have a very big production crew here. It's me, myself, and I. And I was thinking about it. These are very troubling times. And what I do in my troubling times is get troubled like everyone on the planet. And what I'm going to do is tell you that I wrote myself out of the hole last night by writing again in my novel, which I started a long time ago. This is an unpublished novel, began in May 2021. I think I read a piece of this before. What happens is every few months I wind up going back to it. It's like a painting I can't seem to forget. All it is in a way, there's no story here. Well, there is a story. It's about a man who's facing what everyone's facing, and he tries to make sense of it through his writing. So without further ado, I guess I should put another light on because the light's better. I actually would like to get some coffee as well. Hold on, we get a light going here. Get a light going here. There's a little better lighting. Okay, so I tentatively call this novel Roses. And the sections within it are kind of story-like. It's written in a kind of stream of consciousness again. I think I read to you Cyanide in the past. I'm not sure. I was a writer for many decades. It's how I saved my mind over the decades, by writing. And most of it's not been published. The fiction's not been published, by the way, except for a few popular fiction novels. And then, of course, I read his first abortion on a podcast, which was from 1967. I don't know, I could read this one to you, 12/27/21, Goodbye, Edith Piaf. Narcissists have an inflated sense of their own importance and a desperate need for excessive attention, admiration, and validation. Unquote. That's a nice start to that one, isn't it? Beneath the facade of extreme confidence lies an extraordinarily fragile sense of worth that's easily punctured by the slightest criticism. Narcissism is a personality characteristic and a way of interacting with one's world that is very much about self-promotion, maintaining a certain prized image of themselves, and outwardly to others, maintaining control and power, and which is the manifestation of internal fragility, unquote. That's from a psychologist named Gayle. It applies, of course, to everyone in the media. It applies to every performer, great or small. They all know who they are and how fragile they feel. In fact, I was watching a film last week on my favorite channel, TCM, because these movies were all made before political insanity took over Hollywood, where every film has to have a political left-wing political message and or an LGBTQ or person of color, or hopefully a combination of the above, as the star and lead in virtually every movie. You know, they save the world in every movie today. So I watch TCM. I like movies from the 50s and 60s. It's just I understand that world very well. And there was a movie with directed by John Ford, I believe. If I could remember the name of the movie, I'd be very happy right now. This is all, I'm doing this on the cuff here. And he said the character, I remember now, yes, this goes to the novel, right? Under the Volcano. And he loved the actor who played the lead in Under the Volcano. And he said he considered it his greatest role. You'll have to look it up. But I read a scathing review of Under the Volcano by Malcolm Lowry, the author. And, I've struggled reading that book. I've had it for years. I started it years ago. I underlined it and put it down. Then I bought another copy 2 years ago. Then I started reading it again and underlined some great lines. It's like trudging through a jungle with roots on your feet, and you don't even have a machete large enough to cut the roots. And you get trapped in the mangrove every time you start reading Under the Volcano. So I found a review which actually called it a pretentious book that's worthless. Somebody punctured the mythology of Under the Volcano by Malcolm Lowry. I wish I could find that review. I'll do that at another time. It's not what I intended to do right now. It almost inspired me to write again yesterday, because I realized a lot of what I admired was not that great. It was obtuse and difficult. And my writing style is extremely different. It's very straightforward. The sentences are clear. I write like Hemingway, who was my hero. The sentences are very clear, and you understand every word that I write. They're not written in such an obtuse way that you have to decipher the sentence. So I think I'll read from my ongoing novel. And so the piece that ended before this piece ends like this. This is after this thing about narcissism. The visions began soon after he had buried his longtime companion and spirit guide of 17 years. First, it was a bird who spoke to him 2 days after the funeral on the lonely hill in the tall, dying Monterey pine next to the private reservoir. Then it was of an older African-American woman with gray hair sheltering a small eagle in the safety of her left arm near her breast beneath a dark cloak. Where'd this come from? Me. So then we go months later, April 27th, 2022, to this. God, do I need a cup of coffee? Collecting a ripe lemon from his one lemon tree and smelling the mild citrus aroma as he twisted the fruit with a long special pole for gathering fruit, he realized there was a truth in that lemon, a truth that now evaded him, a truth he did not want to face. Just that day, he jokingly recalled Le Huis Clos by Sartre when thinking about his current dead end. No exit in bright neon. Few would ever read what he now wrote. Time had passed him by. Sure, he told himself, I have a few 100,000 followers on social media, a few 100,000 more, some overlapping, who religiously downloaded and listened to his 2 weekly podcasts, and maybe 20,000 who enjoyed his weekly cameo appearances on a political TV network. But he felt disconnected, empty, adrift. After a quarter of a century doing live talk radio 5 days a week, 50 weeks a year, there was no sense of audience, of connectivity. Without callers, he was alone in the universe again, with no exit, only closed doors. It sounds pretty revealing, doesn't it? By the way, as a side note, not in the novel, I have an opportunity to go back on the radio, and I hear the cheers, yeah, do it, Michael. I'm not doing it. I never want to do that again. I want to do what I'm doing now. I never want to do that again. 26 years is enough as a final career in that regard. This is my final act. This is the encore appearance, what I'm doing now. The podcasts, the YouTube pieces, and the occasional television a couple of days a week. This is the encore of Michael Savage's careers. With nowhere to go, nowhere to hide, he once again went back to the oldest of caverns, religion. His religion, the ancient call, in his DNA. He tried to see if wrapping himself in leather straps and reading the simple prayers would heal him, as they had 40 years before, when he was also at a point of no exit. That's called tefillin in the Jewish tradition. You can look it up, Tefillin. Religious Jews have little boxes with scrolls, religious scrolls. One goes on the head, one is wrapped around the arm in a certain way. That's called tefillin. His cynical, rational Western mind could not understand how tying knots around his weak arm in a very specific sequence and placing the other small box over his hairline would marshal a new strength. Self, according to the ancient Jewish mystics. Now here we're going to get into something that I think is worth listening to, because you're not going to read this or hear this anywhere else. I spent a lot of time studying this. Self, according to the ancient Jewish mystics, is made up of 4 dimensions: the physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual. You read in a modern interpretation, Ultimately, what we are is the unified totality of all of our multiple facets. Acknowledging only one dimension of ourself at the expense of the others is in fact self-neglect. After the complex sequence of wrapping the phylacteries around his weak arm and wearing what would be a very weird-looking small leather box on his forehead, the prayer itself was simple. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvosav, v'tzivanu lehaniach tefillin. Commanded us concerning the mitzvah of tefillin. He noted the word commanded. That was the key, he thought, accepting that God, the higher power, the energy, the great spirit, commanded us, and also to follow his other commandments. Remember, commanded us. In our fallen age, each man now believed himself to be his own God, his own commander, to follow his own impulses. And when we find ourselves astray, lost, burned out, there was always the drug, the drink, the sex, the pornography, the therapist, the game, the vitamin, the run, the song, the movie, the pet. Separation and disunity had become the norm in this age of cynicism. How could he find his way back to the orchard to view the Peshat, Remez, and Darush without the Sod? The acronym PADIS would then become Pirud, or separation. I'm reading actually something to you from deep Jewish mysticism or Kabbalah, which is very difficult for the average person to understand. Let me repeat that again. Separation and disunity had become the norm in this age of cynicism. How could he find his way back to the orchard to view the Peshat, Remez, and Darush without the Sod? The acronym PARDES would then become PIRUD, or separation. The four levels of our consciousness, he read, and the four worlds of creation reflect the four letters of the name of God, the Hashem. Could this older man who was now weary of life, but still youthful in appearance, believe there was a, quote, secret within the secret, and enter the Sod, or secret and mystical dimension, the deeper mystery hidden within each of us? And then the fifth dimension, the unified reality, Adam Kadmon, or primordial man, simply by tying himself in knots each morning. And that's the end of that little piece. Now, this I wrote last night. I guess it's short enough to finish this up with this. I hope you understand what I'm trying to say here. I do. It says, after July 4th, the following was written. It's only about 1,000 words, so indulge me if you will. It's from an unpublished novel, which will likely never, ever see the day of light. It'll be burned in a pyre with all my other unpublished novels and writings. I'll tell you all about that another time. It's very hard to look back on 50 years of writing and say, what the hell's going to happen to all of it? I've had it all archived, but nobody's going to publish it. It doesn't have what people want to read today in it. So you can't publish something people don't want to put an ad for Kotex around, or an ad for a razor blade, or a trip to Disneyland. So I'm reading it to you now because I have an audience who likes me and wants to hear from me. So this is picked up now. Boy, do I need a cup of coffee. After July 4th, and it starts like this. Brobdingnag could not have been more difficult for Swift than San Francisco for him. That's a great sentence, by the way. He had just read a news report that morning describing the grand time the most corrupt senator in U.S. history was having that very day with the Pope in Italy. Roxy Lugosi, the daughter of reputed mafioso Patty Lugosi, was seen smiling on a beach in Italy with her entourage, running from what remained of the, quote, press, with her husband Jimmy, who had recently been arrested on a DUI at 2 a.m. in the wine country. Martin envied the evil American mafia daughter. She was the son Don Corleone dreamed of having. Senator Corleone, Governor Corleone. More powerful now than Puzo or Coppola ever conceptualized. Meaner and more nakedly sinister. Roxy knew she was untouchable. She owned not only Congress, but the senile president himself. Now clearly senile, but always a bagman for the Baltimore family. Their man in Congress. He had been thrust into the presidency through illegal votes and rigged voting machines that even Stalin would not have dared try in the 1930s Russia. This is all fiction, of course. Lugosi doesn't exist, and that never happened. Yes, Martin envied her. He could not help but see her fawned over at the Vatican by Lenin's Pope, she pretending to be humble to the help. Her fake lifetime husband, a well-known woman stooping machine, who she ignored as just useful spermatozoa and as a window dummy for the likes of Jake Tapper, Anderson Cooper, and the other media prostitutes. Though he himself had built a fortune with his own estranged wife, Clarette, they were both social outcasts, living as they did in Senator Roxy Lugosi's district. Most of the ignorant citizens around them were of the most inane variety, with their heads only capable of pat leftist phrases. And so it went. Day after day, week after week, year after year, now unbearable after they both individually retired from their intense life's business. Martin feared his age and dying. Nothing seemed to work to stop the constant fear except a few glasses of wine at night, his cameo appearances on an obscure TV channel twice a week, his podcasts and his hobbies, cars, a powerful motor cruiser, antiques, such as the bronzes he once cleaned with cyanide, fine little-known oil paintings, and antique clocks. As he contemplated his own clock's final beat, he did not know what to do with his art, his writings. Nobody in his family wanted any of it, all living their own lives. Damn the shadow, damn the light. He kicked the shadow, kicked the pain, came to haunt him in his addict's brain, back again like torrential rain. Religion, movies, and birds, which held the most promise? Religion was hope for release or salvation, which he never attained. He liked to escape into 1950s and 60s white men movies, as he joked, and also took great delight in observing the pelicans, seagulls, and cormorants who sailed right in front of his small cottage on the bay, and the small finches on the tree side of his property, who he fed approved seed to and made them a small water fountain. But even with the birds, there was darkness for Martin. The little finches tried to build nests in his window frames during mating season. He had to sweep the precious small twigs away each morning as the mating pair watched him from the adjacent roof. He tried to talk to them. He bought them a small birdhouse and attached it to his fence, and they wouldn't have it. He put bread each day on the roof of the birdhouse, hoping the mating pair of finches would accept his window box alternative. But the finches would not, loudly objecting to his sweeping away their partially built nests each morning. The mating pair loudly chirped, fluttered, stared at him, but would not inhabit the perfect small wooden house he had bought for them. It became a daily struggle. Small twigs swept to the deck, hysterical little birds. Then one day he observed a tiny broken egg on the side of his house. The black crows had become very aggressive that spring. They were reported to have attacked people. They would steal the small pieces of bread he put out each day as he spoke to the finches. Here he would point to the little pair on the roof staring down at him, the male with a red head. Here is some bread for you. And soon the large crows would appear pecking away at the bread. And then one day, the loud dawn chirping stopped, and the little brave pair was gone. A silent spring emerged.